Let's talk sales, let's talk leadership, and specifically building from scratch or scaling a sales team inside of a company. I talk to a lot of sales managers, a lot of sales leaders, and they struggle with this concept in comparison to hiring one or two sales roles inside of an already established sales organization. Let me explain the difference between the two. When you try to hire one or two sales roles in an already established company, you have a baseline for what the criteria is for that person to be successful in that role. It may be industry specific, it may be specific to the products or services that you sell, or it may be specific to the culture inside of the organization. So you take those items, you look at individuals that have been successful in the role, okay, and you may have some other people to lean on for reference when trying to build what that ideal candidate profile is. Now you may think to yourself, well, what's the difference? If you're hiring a new team inside of an organization, you have some of those things already in place, but that's not necessarily a fact. Inside of an organization, when you're entering, it's the same as building a new division. When you're entering into this realm of growth, okay, some of this is exploratory, and some of these things are items that you need to test and see what works and what doesn't work. And when you're engaging in that research and development phase within your organization, which we oftentimes think of that in terms of products or services, but a lot of times there's a research and development phase for us building out teams inside of our organization, especially if we want them to be successful, sustainable, and growth oriented. And there's nothing more growth oriented than building out a sales team inside of a company. It's the lifeblood of most companies, especially when they're scaling and growing. You'll see a lot of companies, before they beef up their capacity, they beef up their sales effort. And those two work in concert, right? We beef up our sales effort, we go out, we obtain more business as much as we possibly can, and then we scale our capabilities in terms of an operational outlook, or scaling how much of a product we're producing to meet that demand that we just created. So you may think, well, what is the difference between hiring a sales role versus hiring a sales team? Well, first, with sales roles, there's already infrastructure in place. When you're building out a sales team, you have to think about, what is this infrastructure going to look like? What type of CRM are we going to use? Okay, how many salespeople are we going to have to hire? Do we want to break these territories up geographically, by vertical markets? How do we want to structure the sales organization? Now, that's going to take a little bit of planning, because once you've done that, you can now get an idea of how many individuals you need and of what seniority or skill set or background in order to match what you believe the sales organization should look like. This is not always black and white. You may not understand how much of an area, okay, one individual can cover initially. And depending on how you're breaking out these territories, there may be an experimental phase in doing that. You can't just look at the key performance indicators that you would look at for a regular salesperson. We would normally, when we're hiring somebody for a sales role, look at, have they been successful in terms of produce at other companies? Okay, have they hit quota? Have they done it consistently? How long have they done it consistently? Have they ever switched industries and repeated that success somewhere else? And then those produce-based metrics are going to be backed up by some of the items that we view as sustaining those wins or that produce. And those things are going to be pipeline development. Are they a networker? Are they a farmer? Are they a hunter? What percentage of their business is derived from each? These are things that we're going to start to look at to support, okay, you hit this number, this target, and here are all the activities that you've done to achieve that. And I can look at individuals that I already have in my organization or other organizations in the same industry, and I can say, okay, this lines up, this makes sense. And then once I've met the person and kind of ran through their skills, I can determine if I think they may or may not be a fit. Now, when we hire for a singular role or a couple of roles inside of a company, there's an onboarding cost. When you're creating a division, when you're creating a sales organization, there's a huge onboarding cost because you have to outfit that team with all the tools necessary for them to operate. So there's that additional cost. And if you plug that cost into each individual, there's a per head cost to build out that team that far exceeds adding a new individual into an organization. But we're making that investment. But because we're making a greater investment, we want a greater return on that investment, or at least a more predictable return on that investment, okay, because we're going to be putting forth so much of a financial output for this to work, that we want to be a little bit more careful about who we're hiring. Why do I say that? Because it's not just about looking at somebody's resume and seeing that they've hit quota, right? Because when you're forming a new division or a new segment of your business, especially when it's a sales growth engine inside of the business, you want to bring people on that are comfortable with the ambiguity to create their own job inside of your company. And why do I say that? Because you're probably asking yourself, well, Ralph, you described building out this infrastructure. So you're building the infrastructure, you're building everything that these people are going to need to be successful. And then they're coming into that and they get a fresh start, right? They get an untapped territory. They get a lot of things that you may not get going into an established company. And that may seem true, but the reality is that we don't know a lot about what's going to happen and how we're going to have to pivot to drive that team towards success. Now, a lot of times when we're putting a new sales organization into a company, it's because it was either owner operated or you had people doing dual roles inside of a smaller organization where they were half operations, half sales. Maybe there was ownership who sold. Okay, there's a variety of scenarios that are not necessarily sales organizations, right? We're talking about scaling, we're talking about growth. We can't do what we did here and expect it to work over here. Okay, we're on two different planes. When you're an owner operator and you're selling, you're out forming relationships where the other party, the customer, knows that you're the owner of the organization. That relationship is a lot different than when you're layered out with a salesperson between you and the operation of the business. Okay, it's viewed differently from the customer's perspective. And there's a lot more customer intimacy, okay, in businesses that are lower volume, where the owner operator is out making those connections and dealing with that customer, right? So what we want to do is we want to duplicate the customer intimacy over here because that's so important, okay? Especially when we're trying to scale owner-operated businesses, right? Because the first realm we scale in is with our current customer base. So now we have to re-educate that customer base to be comfortable with the fact that they're not dealing with the same individual or dealing with the company in the same manner that they used to. And now they're going to have this new individual face-to-face with them handling the account. And that takes a little bit of time to get people comfortable. But just like in the medical profession, the rule is first do no harm. So we first don't want to damage the business that we have by introducing this new, often seemingly aggressive arm of the business in terms of a new sales organization. Okay, so that's the first key step. Then what we want to do is arm these folks with the tools and the ammunition to go out and hunt for new business elsewhere. We want to meet these types of challenges head on. We want to go after that challenge tooth and nail and tackle it as early in the process. And that means having enough individuals on board to successfully go out into the marketplace and determine what works and what doesn't work. Okay, so what are the ideal candidates that we want for this new sales organization role? Well, I'm going to tell you something that's probably not going to be of the norm. And that is that we want a little bit of variety in the individuals that we bring into the organization to build this sales team and move our sales effort forward. We want people that are practical. Okay, we want some analytical, practical people in there because those are the individuals that are really going to look at some of the data and do some comparisons in order to determine what segment of our marketplace they could be most successful in the fastest, right? But here's the problem with those analytical individuals. They're not necessarily people of action, right? So you need those aggressive salespeople as well, who are the go-getters. They're like, let's go out, let's start knocking on doors, let's start talking to folks. We're going to take the feedback that we get from those individuals. We're going to pivot quick. If this doesn't work, then we're going to try this. And when we find what works, we're going to pour gasoline all over it and have this thing ablaze. We need those individuals. And if you can get those people working in tandem with your analytical salespeople, you're going to be in a good place. Okay? Then you need your people that love to network. These are usually people that are a little bit calmer, okay, on the aggressive prospecting side. And what they like to do is go out and earn the trust of individuals in the space, take a little time to develop those relationships, okay, and then start to get a referral base as they start to work for some of those individuals. When you get all three of those, the analytical, research-driven, data-driven salesperson, the aggressive person that's willing to knock down doors, and the individual that wants to go out and learn about the people that potentially buy your service or product, you get the three-legged stool, which will help support the organization in this growth phase. And when you're looking for these people, you don't want to just look for their prior produce, as I said before. You want to look for people that can prove to you in selling themselves in the interview process that without a doubt, they are comfortable with the fact that they are coming into a situation where there's uncertainty, and that fact alone excites them. If they can view uncertainty as an opportunity and express that to you in no uncertain terms during the interview process, you hire that person. Who do you want to stay away from in this process? You want to stay away from those individuals who have a lot of questions about, well, how are you going to support me? How am I going to learn? What does the training program look like? And I know this sounds really awful to say, because usually those are typical things that we would ask in the interview process of any job. But in this circumstance, you really need those people with that entrepreneurial spirit who are ready to get out there, they're go-getters, and they want to hit the ground running. Now, there is a piece of this that we have to be very careful of, because there are individuals that we don't want inside of our new sales division inside of this organization that may appear to fit some of those characteristics that we described earlier when we said what we were looking for in some of these team members. Overconfident salespeople. Okay, they may have a supporting resume to justify their existence, to justify their success rate. It may represent some produce. They may have a couple of good references that they can provide you. And on paper, they may look really good. But these overconfident salespeople are usually a wolf in sheep's clothing. And I'll explain why. If somebody ever walks into an interview and says to you, hey, I could sell ice to an Eskimo, do not hire them. Why? Eskimos don't buy ice. They buy tools to break ice. And this person doesn't understand that selling ice to an Eskimo implies that they can sell a useless product to a stupid person. And if somebody has that attitude about this chosen profession, you don't want them in your organization, And especially when you're starting something anew, when you're starting something from scratch and you need a proof of concept. These people are toxic and they will kill it before it starts. Keep them out of your organization. So now you're going to hire a few of these people that we described. Hopefully you get a good mix, okay? And hopefully they're able to start testing some of these concepts and start building a proof of concept in way of successes and failures. When you're building a new sales organization, you don't want to be afraid of failure. Failure is going to happen. What you want to do is fail quickly, fail often, and make adjustments for success. This way, when opportunities for success arise, you can capitalize on them and drive the sales organization forward in terms of extreme growth. When we're scaling, we're not just looking for small incremental growth. Remember, we're putting in a huge investment into this team, and we need to get a huge ROI as soon as possible. And some people might say, hey, well, things like this take time, and they do take time, but time is not on your side. That's why you need to experiment often, fail quickly, and adjust. If you can't do that formula, this is not going to work. Here's the other piece that you have to consider when building a new sales organization. Lose early in terms of your talent. Although we're trying to do all these things to protect us from hiring the wrong people, it is inevitable that we will have one or two people on the team throughout at least the beginning phases of this effort that don't end up fulfilling our hopes in terms of what a team member on this sales team would look like. Now, listen, this could be extreme. The person's toxic, they're corrupting the rest of the team, and they're slowing progress. Those people we want to get out the door as soon as possible. But on the other side, it might be somebody that we really like, and they just don't fit the mold, and they can't produce. And unfortunately, even with tons of training, even with tons of support, even with tons of effort on their part, this is not going to succeed. And you don't have the time to carry dead weight. Cut these people early, get them off the team. If they need to be replaced, replace them. If they don't need to be replaced, tighten the team up and proceed forward. These are some of the key elements of building or scaling a sales organization inside of a company. We talked a little bit earlier about CRM. We talked a little bit earlier about infrastructure. All of these things are things you need to consider when building out your team. Some of them you want to consider in the beginning. Some of them you want to consider as you move forward. And some of them you want to just keep in your mind as you're building the team that they may be considerations. Okay, you need infrastructure at first. I suggest having a CRM in mind or in place once you have this team come aboard. Okay, because this is going to allow you to structure the sales organization. You're going to formalize your sales process. It's going to allow you to collect the data that you need to understand your sales cycle, understand close ratios, have visibility into your pipeline, forecast the business. If you do not have this in place, you're spinning your wheels because all this effort that you're putting out and all this information that's coming back into the organization is not being collected anywhere, is not being driven into reports, and is not being analyzed. And if you're not doing those things, you're not going to be successful as a sales organization. So CRM needs to be in place, and all those things that come with having the CRM, sales process, sales cycle, ways to collect data, a system for how we want to run our deals, all those elements need to be in place, and the CRM is going to allow you the tools to do that successfully, and then more importantly, report on it to show success, failure, and otherwise. CRM needs to be in place. Formal structure of the sales organization, this can evolve over time. And what do I mean by that? Well, you may have some, I mentioned before, we're either building from scratch or sometimes we're scaling up the sales organization. A lot of times when we're scaling up from a small business to a larger business, we have some individuals that I'll call legacy employees who have been with the organization for a long period of time, maybe have held several roles inside the company, okay, and really understand the business at a granular level. They understand all the ins and outs of the business. And a lot of time when we're building a sales organization, the individuals charged with building that sales organization are newer individuals. They're sales leadership that are brought in from other companies and other places to build this infrastructure and move this effort forward. These legacy employees are key to the success of the sales organization. So if you have them there, access them because they're full of knowledge. And the way you access them is you think about, how can I promote this person up? Obviously, I need them to help produce for a period of time, but then I want to elevate them. I want to get them in a position where they now can lead and mentor the newer individuals we're bringing into the organization. What does this do? Well, a lot of times people that are already with a company that's changing, okay, are not necessarily comfortable with the change. So you want to get buy-in from those individuals because they're going to help you bring up the rest of the people that are new to the organization. And if you don't have that buy-in, it becomes very hard for them not to become an anchor that drags that team down. So you want to get buy-in from them. And the way you do that is you show them respect and you say, hey, I want to use your skills and your knowledge to help grow the organization. You're valuable to the organization. We need you here, and we need you here in a major way. And if they possess the skills to lead, we want to give them the opportunity to realize a leadership role. They put in the time, they understand the organization, and they offer a lot of value. Let's put them in a leadership role to mentor those other individuals when we can. If you don't have legacy employees in place, what you want to do is find individuals in the new team that possess leadership skills that you can start to formulate a path to a leadership role that they can go on. They can go on with you, and you can evaluate milestones along the way and eventually support putting a role in place that places them in a leadership position, okay? And hopefully they've excelled and understand this new organization that you've built and understand the marketplace and understand the go-to-market strategy, and they can relay that as you backfill individuals into those sales roles. These things are key because if you want to grow the company, you put a sales team in place. If you want to grow the sales team to further grow the company, you put sales leadership layered throughout the sales organization to help drive that forward. And what this does, as you're going through this process, it allows you to formulate a sales training program inside of your organization, okay, that's formalized so that you can continue to do this. Now it's automated. Now it's repeatable. Now you have a real division inside of your company, okay, that's formed for growth. That's how you form a sales organization. That's how you grow companies.